Sin is a tool used to separate us from God. Sin is a tool that Satan uses and that we use on each other to separate ourselves from God, right? That's how it works. And the only way we can get back to God is to accept the gift of Jesus Christ, so that he can take that sin away from us. Because we'll always sin, but if everything has been paid for, if a ransom has been paid for, past, present, and future, that's crazy. Like, imagine someone paying for everything you're going to do in the future and in the past. Imagine someone giving a sum of money to somebody, and, it pays for everything you're going to do that's wrong, every word you're going to say that's wrong, everything you're going to say that's hurtful, right? For the past, present, and future, so that no one can hold you accountable, right? So that even when you mess up, you still can't be held accountable for that. Not because of anything you did, but because of something that someone else did, right? Something that they paid for. Anyway, moving on past that, let's talk about it. So sin, like I said, it separates us from God, but how does it do that? It's because we're doing things against his will, and these things end up hurting us in the process. God doesn't just make rules because he feels like being a big meanie in the sky who likes making rules. No. These rules are meant to keep us safe, the same way that we make rules in our law, in our government, right? The same way we make laws. There's a reason why we have a law that says you can't kill people. There's a reason why we have a law that says that you cannot commit manslaughter. Because, one, you don't have a reason to kill people in those situations, right? And I'll derive this from the Bible. A lot of translations of the Bible will say do not kill, but the real translation is do not murder, because God allows people to kill all the time. Because killing can be in self-defense. Killing can be to help someone or save someone. Murder is doing something unjustly and it's wrong. When you murder someone, there wasn't a reason for it besides the fact of you just wanted to do it because it was of some benefit to you, right? So for example, you murder somebody because they have information that you don't want to get out, right? But sticking on the point, sin is not equal, right? There are different punishments for different sins, right? It'd be ridiculous for God to sit there and try to punish someone for stealing a cookie and then also punish someone. It'd be difficult to sit there and try to justify God punishing someone for stealing a cookie by sending them to hell. Or I wouldn't even use that example. Say there's two people. One has a cookie, the one stole a cookie, the other person has slept with someone's wife. It'd be stupid for anybody, including God, unless God had a reason, which if he did, that'd be the case. But it'd be silly of me to sit there and say, this person did a worse crime than this person. Why on earth would I sit there and say that someone who stole a cookie did a worse crime than someone who slept with someone else's wife? That doesn't make any sense. There's clearly a moral imbalance within me if I think that this person who stole a cookie is way worse than the person who slept with somebody else's wife. There's clearly a difference in severity of the crime, right? And that's what we're going to focus on, severity. There's a severity to different crimes. For example, it is so much worse to murder somebody than it is to steal from somebody. If you steal from somebody, you have a chance to amend that. You can give what you stole back. You can work off what you stole for. If you kill somebody, you can't bring them back to life. You can't pay for that person's life because life is priceless. Right? There's a completely different severity. Stealing stuff is all the way down here to the floor, and killing someone is all the way up here at the ceiling, right below a couple other stuff, right? But anyway, getting into it, we're going to talk about Bible verses that support this, right? So the first Bible verse I'm going to bring up is going to be Numbers 25. So I'll share that here right now. Give me a second. Yeah, okay, that works. Anyway, yeah, so Numbers 25, and we're going to read from verses 1 to all the way up to 5, and then we're going to skip down to verses 16 to 18. So, reading off. While Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill those of his men who have yoked themselves in the Baal of Peor. So, analyzing this first, let's do that real quick. The first thing we can notice is that Israel is, yet again, and this is why people make jokes. If you're not like a big person a big social media person, and you're not like watching a lot of memes, if you are someone who watches a lot of Christian memes, you'll notice something I noticed while getting into that is that a lot of Christians make jokes about Numbers, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy because the Israelites just don't seem to get it. Like they continuously just keep on trying to piss God off. Like you think that they were doing this intentionally, but this is just like every second, it's like the best way to describe it is like a cheating wife. And I wouldn't even say wife, someone who cheats in general. Every time you turn around, they're talking with somebody else, even though they're supposed to be giving you a relationship and committing to that relationship. That's what Israel was doing every single time, and it was honestly just kind of comedical, but also very like tragic, because like at the same time, we're no better than Israel, right? So anyway, getting back to it, let's reread it one more time. While Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal Peor. Now pay attention, because the word yoked is used twice from verses 1 to 5. This is again referencing the fact that they are yoking, right? And when we understand from a spiritual aspect, yoking is when you link yourself with someone, right? A yoke is not an egg yolk, so please get that out of your mind. For anyone who thought I was talking about an egg, no. A yoke is a tool between two, and I actually might show it here. Let me see, yoke, cows, right? So a yoke, I don't know if you guys can see this on Discord. Let me see if you can, actually. Let me see if you can. Yes, you can. Awesome. So a yoke is what two cows or two heifers, whatever you want to call them, will use, right? And whenever you have a yoke, what you want to do is that you want to make sure that the cows, both cows, are as strong as each other, right? You want to make sure they're equally yoked. If they're not, for example, if, let's say, this is a good picture too. Let's say, well, no, never mind. Let's say this bull, which looks way bigger than this bull, but let's say this is the bigger bull, right? And this is a smaller bull. You wouldn't want a smaller bull and a bigger bull trying to lead the same thing, because the bigger bull is going to pull in a certain direction, while the smaller bull is going to lead in that direction. The smaller bull is only going to follow the bigger bull because it's not stronger. It's not stronger than the bigger bull. If they're both the same, if they're both of the same strength, they're going to walk in the same direction. But if one is stronger than the other, it will pull one to the other side to help you better understand that. Anyway, back to Numbers. So now we're going to skip down all the way to Numbers 16. Yeah, 16. Okay. So, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Harass the Midianites and strike them down, for they have harassed you with their wiles, with which they beguiled you in the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of the chief of Midian, their sister, who was killed on the day of the plague on the act of Peor." So, the daughter, sorry, I'm trying to recollect this, yeah. So, Cosbi, very interesting story about her. So, she was brought back by one of the Israelite men because he was trying to marry her. Now, she was a prostitute to somebody else, so he was marrying someone who's a prostitute, which is already a problem. And the fact of the matter is that God previously told them not to, like, just hang out with these people, right? Because we understand that they're praising other gods, and they are just being sacrilegious, right? They're praising another god, and they're doing things that go against what God told them not to do. And as we understand, these people are just like, the Israelites are basically whoring themselves to this entire nation, and they're following this nation because they're whoring themselves to the people, right? Which this is all pointing back to kind of how, you know, you don't want to be with someone who's not of the same faith as you, because they're going to make you compromise. And if you compromise, you'll do what the Israelites did in Numbers, and what they also did in Leviticus and Exodus and a bunch of other chapters. The Israelites, it's ridiculous with them, bro. There's so many other things we could nitpick at, but getting back on track. Now, specifically, the thing that is interesting here is that if we go to back up and scroll up to verse 6, and behold, and I'll highlight this too, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family, in the sight of Moses and in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent. Now, the reason why the Israelites were weeping was because the Israelites had suffered a plague. This plague was sent by God because he was not happy with them doing what they were doing, right? God was not happy that they were whoring themselves off to other countries, that they were sleeping with these women, and then sleeping with these women led them to praising this other God and worshiping him instead of their God. He wasn't happy about this at all. No one would be, right? You help these people for hundreds of years, and then the first time they see someone who's attractive, they go follow them, and then they follow that attractive person and worship the attractive person's God, make sacrifices to them, right? Anyway, whole conundrum. Anyway, moving on to verse 7. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, and the priest saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand. Now, what he did later on, well, it says here in verse 8, and went after the man of Israel into the chamber and pierced both of them, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. Through her belly. Thus the plague on the people of Israel was stopped. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. So understand, through these verses, we can see that the Israelites, like, God wasn't playing around. He wasn't happy about this at all. 24,000 of them died. Now, you'll come to understand that the Israelites are a very big nation. 24,000 is a lot of people, but it doesn't amass to how many were left. If you move on to Numbers 26 and 27, you'll understand that there were a lot more Israelites than 24,000. Just to give you a perspective, if you move on to Numbers, and that's why it's called Numbers, because there's a lot of counting of the Israelites. Just one tribe of the Israelites alone is 43,730, and there's about 12 of the tribes that are close to that number. So 24,000 wasn't a lot, but it wasn't great, because that's a lot of people who died because of their inability to only worship God, right? So, I talk a lot, but let's get back to the main focus. Sin. God clearly did not agree with Israel. Like, he doesn't agree with Israel anytime they ever go against him. But it's very clear that there's a level of punishment to be dished out, right? When it comes to Israel just having distrust in God, he gets angry with them and he'll punish them in a less severe way. But when it comes to Israel just straight up rebelling against God and betraying him, like what they did here, people die, right? Like, for example, when the Israelites complain in the desert for food, oh, we want quail, we want all this stuff, but we just have manna, we don't have anything that's super tasty to eat, right? That was a case of them just complaining and them being less faithful. This is a case of them just completely betraying God. Like, for example, whenever you're married to someone and you go sleep with someone else, that's just you betraying them. Because you said that you're going to be in a partnership with that person and you married them, but then you go sleep with someone else to make a partnership with them. That's you betraying that person, right? And that's why the punishment was so severe. And that's why God allowed this person, Eleazar, son of Aaron, to do what he did. One, because he was appeasing God, because what that man did was not acceptable. Imagine that, and here's, to put in comparison what he did, imagine that, and this for anybody who's in the VC who wants to be in a relationship, imagine you had a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? And imagine you were talking with your parents one day, right? And you were talking about how, my boyfriend, girlfriend has felt so distant, they haven't been treating me the same, they just haven't been giving me the same love we had at the beginning of the relationship. And then imagine in the middle of gosh bless, I'm talking too fast even for myself. In the middle of that conversation, your boyfriend, girlfriend walks in with a boyfriend, another girl, another boy, and they're holding hands and they're making googly eyes at each other, right? You'd be so unbelievably upset. Especially after you were just mourning, talking to your parents, crying about it, about how nothing seems the same in your relationship anymore. And then the problem of a relationship walks right in the room, broad as day, and they're not even trying to hide it, right? That's why this was such a big thing, right? And you can pay attention to it too. This is in front of Israel. This isn't in front of 10 people, 20 people. This is in front of hundreds of thousands of people, right? And he knows what he's doing. He's not a fool. He's smart enough to understand what he's doing, right? So that is why Eleazar was completely just in what he did, right? And God was happy that Eleazar did this. In fact, in some translations, it even says that God was happy that Eleazar was zealous like this. And what zealous means is that you just essentially you have a very strong enthusiasm for something. But getting back to the main point, punishment and sin. There's a different. Sin is not all equal. Sin is equal in the sense that it separates us from God equally. For example, you stealing separates you from God just as much as someone who is lustful, just as much as someone who kills, just as much as someone who lies. That all separates you from God. Now, is the severity of the sin is the same? No. Is the severity of you stealing a chocolate bar the same as you lusting for someone or you hurting somebody? No, it's not the same. But we can understand that there is an equal amount of separation from God each time you do any of those things, even if we don't directly know it. God punishes people based on a series of things, right? Their knowledge and the relationship with him, and then also what they've done, right? So, for example, a lot of people will think about Paul whenever it comes to a standard of how forgiving God is. Paul murdered Christians on the daily. He did it like it was a job. For those of you who ever worked a job, like let's go with McDonald's. You serve fries to people, you serve burgers to people, you take the order. Paul was doing that same thing, but instead he was killing people like it was some kind of order, right? And the thing was, he would go out and find them too. He'd go out and find them, and when he found them, he'd kill them, right? Families, children, mothers. He had no discretion. As long as he knew they were Christian, he killed them. And in some sense, he thought he was doing this for God because he thought these were blasphemers. But eventually, Jesus met him on the road there, and like I said, the reason why this was so different in this situation was because he genuinely thought what he was doing was what God wanted him to do. That's why Jesus came to him and said, Saul, why do you persecute me? And then he was confused and said, what do you mean? What am I doing? How am I persecuting you, right? But yeah, finishing that up, ultimately, if you didn't catch anything else I said, take this away. Sin is equal in the sense that it separates us from God the same as every other sin does. No sin does not separate you from God. No sin separates you from God more than another sin. Now, each sin has a different severity, right? For example, you lusting after someone is not the same as you stealing a candy bar from somebody. For example, like just if you pay attention to the Ten Commandments, you'll understand that there's a severity for different sins, right? And there are more than 10 commandments. It's just the main thing that people think of whenever they think of, a standard of God's law. But like I said, there is a severity level for sins, and God is able to determine that. We're able to determine that, right? God has given us that knowledge to understand that it's not the same when someone steals from us and when someone kills someone that we love. An example I used earlier, for those of you who weren't here, is you stealing something from someone and you killing someone. If you steal something from someone, there can be amends made there. you can give that person their candy bar back, and if you can't give it back to them because you already ate it, you can work for it. You can work it off and then give them another candy bar. If you kill someone, you've taken someone's life. You can't revive them like in a video game. You can't revive them because you're not Jesus, right? You're not going to pull a Lazarus trick and revive somebody. And you can't pay for the life either, because you can't. A life is priceless, right? If you pay attention to some of the old laws in the Bible, whenever an animal would kill somebody, the animal had to be killed. Doesn't matter if it was on accident, on purpose, or whatever. The animal had to be killed. And even after the animal was killed, you would still have to pay a certain amount of money to said person based on who was killed. Whether it was a slave, whether it was a wife, a son, a daughter, right? But that was just a basis of understanding of how things work. And the reason why the animal had to be killed is because the animal was clearly shown, it was a series of things. The animal wasn't able to be controlled if it was killing someone. The owner wasn't able to control it. And the fact that the animal just killed somebody, animals are animals, so like they're not going to learn and take regret. For example, if my dog bit somebody, he's not going to recollect on that the rest of his life and be like, oh man, I'm so sorry I bit that person. Dang. And the next time you see somebody, he's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't bite them. No. If they're doing something to agitate him or running from him, he'll think to bite them. Animals just don't have the same logic as we do. But yeah, I'm kind of yapping at this point, but yeah, like I said before, finishing off, sin is equal in the sense that it separates us from God the same, but it has a different level of severity. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean you should try to do you should try to commit smaller sins and not bigger sins? No, you should avoid all sin if you can. And in most cases, you can avoid sinning. You won't be perfect, right? Because no one's going to be perfect. There was only one person who's being perfect, but you can avoid it, right? Now, when it comes to debating other people and sharing the gospel of Christ with them, it's going to be difficult explaining to them why God still punishes us even if we didn't commit as severe of a sin as someone else. And it's mainly because of the fact that, like I said, he's not worried about the severity of sin, the level of the severity of sin you committed. He's worried about the fact that you committed sin, which is what ultimately decides whether we go to heaven or hell, right? Sin is what separates us from God, not the severity of it, the sin itself. So someone who stole, someone who lusted, someone who killed, they can all go to hell. They can all go to heaven as well, but that's if they accept the gift that God gave them. That's about it for my message. I'm not going to yap for any longer. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys out there. And for those of you who want to look at the verses again, the verses I'm pulling from are just Numbers 25. Honestly, yeah, I would just say read Numbers 25. Numbers in general is good. I like it the most out of Leviticus and Exodus. Out of those books, when it comes to the Israelites traveling in the desert, in the wilderness, I like it the most because it's just a little more interesting than other ones. I still think you should read every book in the Bible. Every book has some use and importance. Like the whole book itself, there's nothing in the book that's useless. There really isn't. There's no fluff in the book, right? You will always find a useful scripture in some book, and it will always apply in some way. But yeah, that's about it for this. Hopefully I was helpful for you guys, and for those of you who didn't see this in person, you have this video, so that's cool. But yeah, until then guys, if you have any questions, DM me, or I'm going to go in general and hang out there for a little bit for anyone who has questions. But yeah, they don't have to be questions for this. They can be questions for anything else, literally anything else. I don't care if it's a question about what the best Pokemon is. It can be a random question. But yeah, so I'm going to stop the recording here.